Good morning, fleshlings. So, welcome again to Airships Conquer the Skies development stream. So, as you can see, I'm still following the regular schedule posted on Twitch and will probably continue to do so. It's pretty regular at the moment. The reason for that is, so I'm doing it at different times, basically because I'm trying to find out at what times people actually want to tune in and watch it live. Because I'm in Zurich here, like what might seem like a good time for me to stream might be a really stupid time for people to actually view the stream. So I'm just kind of trying out different things. Obviously, I'm not gonna, try to stream at 2 a.m. my time because I'd go mad. So yeah, let's just see how that goes. Okay, so let's get started. So we want to do two things today. We want to do a bit of game development and also want to look at the feedback from IndieCade. So IndieCade is this independent games festival of which you can kind of submit your game to, and the nice thing is that even if you don't get in, and Airships didn't get in, you still get send all of the kind of notes and feedback that the jurors gave your game. So it's a really nice way of getting some, kind of properly independent feedback from people who are actually experienced game developers, but also don't have any particular reason to be nice to you because you don't know who they are. So that's pretty nice. So we're going to look at that in a bit, but I think first we're going to do a bit of coding. So yeah, let's get started on that. As usual, I am monitoring chat through this handy iPad. So if you have any questions or just want to say hi, do, and I will reply with voice. So I'll just repeat what you said and reply here, because if I'm typing on this at the same time, it's a mess. I'm still figuring out this Twitch thing, but yeah. Okay, so let's see what we shall work on. Okay, so this is my to-do list for Airships 7.2. I use GitHub for development and also for the major to-dos in the game. And now with 7.2, after version 7, which kind of saw a lot of major features like landships, now with 7.2, it's really a lot of mopping up. So I basically there's been a whole bunch of things which I've said, I will do that at some point, and I kept on pushing that into the next release. And now at 7.2, I'm kind of making a stand and saying, okay, let's actually look at all of these things which I said, I will do that at some point. That would be quite a nice idea. That's a bit of a bug, and actually getting them done. So I have less of a hangover going into version 8. So we've got 9 bugs open, which we either need to fix or find a convenient excuse for not doing. Right, let's do which one? Let's start out with something that might be fairly straightforward, which is this one: aim where the target is going to be, not where it is. So you can see this was actually a to-do item for version 4 all the way back, and I've just been pushing it backwards. So the point here is that basically right now, gunners just aim their guns at the location of their target, not taking into account the movement of the target. So they're not leading their shots. And this, I think at the moment, makes evasion a little bit too powerful. Because in terms of how you play the game, I want the game to be mostly about kind of how you fight. I mostly want the fights to be about kind of clever positioning, about kind of spotting openings and so on. But at the moment, I think because basically the gunners can't really hit moving targets, it's a really good strategy to just have a ship with a fast kind of refresh of the command points, and then to just move it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, basically constantly dancing around so that you don't get hit. And that means if you have a lot of ships, it just becomes a nightmare, and it gets into this kind of micromanagement orgy that you get in other games, and which I don't really want to have in Airships to that degree. So we're gonna look into how to actually do this. I'm just gonna quickly check something while I'm doing that, which is I just want to see, because someone said that there was some issue with Twitch. No, we're all good. Okay, I just wanted to check that it was actually streaming and that it was actually recording the audio properly. That all seems to be working fine. Okay, cool stuff. Right, so that was a purely nervous Twitter refresh, could you tell? Let's look into this. So basically for this we need to go into the targeting code, which is a module. Okay, we have a fire function which basically fires the gun. So okay, what does it do? It figures out where it actually shoots the gun from. It figures out the precise target. So there's a lot of code in here in target that basically does a lot of prioritization and so on, but ultimately it just gives you a target airship and an actual target position it will fire at. Then you can figure out, you know, where it rotates the barrel of the gun to actually point at the right location. Figures out where the muzzle currently is because it wants to spawn the bullet, the shot, like at the exit of the gun, not at its center, right? Yeah, it figures out how big the distance is, including this line, which basically means if you're shooting upwards, you're doing worse. It's like one of the tactical details. If in doubt, shooting down is always better than shooting up. And then it figures out how much should it jitter the shot, so how inaccurate is it. Then finally it actually applies the jitter, so it just applies a random offset. It creates the shot. It adds a trail for the shot if it's going fast enough. It recoils the gun barrel. It also recoils the entire ship if it's a big enough gun, and it says, okay, we've shot the shot. So that's basically how shooting works right now. The thing which we want to do, try to do, is essentially modifying where the shot is going on the basis of the target's movement. That's basically here. So we get Tx and Ty are ultimately where it's actually firing the shot. Okay, so the way we want to do this is we need to figure out, well, how far has the enemy ship moved? Conveniently, we have the distance here. And so we can figure out we've got the travel time here, we've got the distance, and so the travel time should just be the distance divided by the speed of the shot, which is one of those many values. How about this one? Okay, so assuming the units aren't like wonky, which I hope they're not. Let's just go into shot, but I mean, I really assume that shot speed Unless I made a terrible mistake at some point. Okay, we're using the same logic here for the travel time. So that's a pretty good indication that we're doing the right thing. Okay, so this is the travel time. And then we can basically estimate where the ship's going to be. So this is the travel time in milliseconds. So we can say double tx delta, or tx lead, I guess, because we're leading the shots, is target dot A, that's the ship, dot x speed times travel time. Look, it's basic high school math, or basic high school physics. Okay, that gives us this lead, and then we just add it in here. Now, purely in theory, our gunners should now lead their shots. So, I mean, that was sort of the easy part. Now we have to do a bunch of testing to try and prove that this is doing the right thing. So let's create some kind of combat. I guess a good test would be to just like put an enemy building down and have a fairly fast ship and kind of try to do this evasive dance and see if the building copes well. I'm just looking for like a convenient environment to test this in. That will do. Okay, so let's just put down the medium defense tower here on the right. And here on the left, we want something fast. Yeah, this one, HMS Aardvark. That's pretty fast. Okay. So sanity test number 1. The shots are being fired at like a reasonable point if the ship's not moving, which they should, but you know, just to make sure. So now we're telling the ship to rapidly move to the left. Plausibly. Well, let's rapidly move to the right, boys and girls. Okay, so now here we see now, this cannonball, it has a long way to travel, but we're moving in a straight line. Well, we're moving down a little bit, but theoretically speaking, this ought to be, you know, if we got the intercept calculation right, this cannonball now should actually hit the target. It really radically doesn't. It's probably just a problem of the jitter at this point. I think that was just a badly aimed cannonball. Okay, so here's the problem. In order to like the jitter value is kind of so big right now that we can't really tell. So I'm just going to temporarily make all weapons perfectly accurate, right? Just like amazeballs. Just checking I didn't mess up X and Y coordinates, because I love to do that. I've lost so many hours just getting X and Y messed up, and it's so embarrassing when it happens. But I don't think I did. Good stuff. Right, so we're literally just saying shoot exactly in the right place without any inaccuracy. Wait, let's do this in debug. So the nice thing about Java is that to a limited degree, you can actually swap out the code as it's running. So if I want to change the body of a function, I can run it in debug mode, and then if I want to change it halfway through the program running, I can just change it and say, okay, apply those changes, and next time the function gets called, it will be the new version of the function. And that's really, really useful if you're just iterating on trying to get something right. I especially use it with like graphical stuff, where I'm just trying to get like a layout or an offset or a set of colors or something right. Then I just, I run it and I just keep on making these adjustments until it looks right. And that's a million times easier than, restarting the game every single time I make a minor adjustment. Unfortunately, it's a fairly limited thing. You can basically exchange the body of functions, but you can't add new functions, you can't change the signature of functions, you can't add new fields. At this point, if any one of you is listening who's kind of CS geeky, you will be going, oh god, but you can do all of this with Lisp. Lisp is a great language. And yeah, that's true. I mean, that's sort of the point. We had the technology for doing these kind of runtime replacements of code back, 40 years ago or something. It's just that it's a bit hard to get right, and so modern development environments don't have it. Pretty stupid. I think there are some tools for Java where you can do this a bit more, but it's still only kind of a halfway house to like proper being able to arbitrarily replace the code. Because again, if you're a CS nerd, the whole point about Lisp is that because the Lisp code is just literally a bunch of Lisp data structures, there's just a bit in the program where the code is, and you can just change those data structures, and then the code is different, right? Of course, you're doing this at the expense of some of the things which I like about Java, which are, for example, having a strong and strictly typed language, having a whole bunch of IDE support and so on, because Lisp can only do this kind of random mutation of code because it doesn't really try to enforce a lot of the kind of data integrity that Java will enforce for you. So, yeah, in the end, ideally I'd like both, but it's nice to have at least this. Okay, so anyway, let's go back into combat mode. So now the nice thing is that we'll be able to switch perfect accuracy on or off in the middle of the combat. Turn on slow motion. Oh, I moved the slow motion and hide UI keys from the 1 and 2 buttons to the F1 and the F2 buttons, because that makes more sense. And also that's now allowed me to have the number keys for the things like the overlays are now being keyed by numbers. So the idea, I'll show you that in a moment, actually. It's pretty nice. You still missed. That was just incompetent of you. Never mind. But yeah, you can see now it's shooting directly at the engines. So the targeting system is sort of semi-clever. It understands the idea that it's not telepathic, but it understands the idea that the bits where the smoke is coming out is a good idea to shoot at because that's where the engines are. And it understands the idea that the bits where there's barrels sticking out is a good idea because that's where the guns are. But for example, it doesn't know to shoot. That will probably miss. No, maybe. Yeah, so these are now overshooting. It doesn't know to, for example, shoot an ammo store, because ammo stores have no external characteristics, right? So it can't know that. Okay, so we're perfectly stationary and it hit us correctly. That's nice. Do we have a... yeah. Okay. Okay, so here's a question. Now does this one? Yes. So you saw, hopefully, that it shot a cannonball and it hit precisely in the right spot. It hit precisely in the engine, despite the fact that yeah. Okay. So I think the major. Okay. I think I know what the issue now is. So right at the start of this fight, it kind of neatly missed the ship by shooting too low down, and the reason why is simply that, of course, airships wobble up and down all the time because of the way the suspension works. That wobble is intentional. I tuned that wobble very carefully because I wanted it in there to, if something's hovering, it's wobbling up and down in the air slightly. That's just, that's what hovering means to us visually. So I carefully tuned the kind of frequency and amplitude of that wobble to be to look good. But of course, now the thing is that that wobble is a constant change in vertical speed, and that means that the gunners are not trying to lead their shots, assuming, the idea with leading shots is you're always assuming that your opponent isn't changing direction. But of course, if you're wobbling up and down, you're changing direction constantly. So actually this has made it worse in that way. Actually it's made ships like this, which are very long and thin, really good at evading, because now the shots will lead up or lead down, will up and down, and so we'll keep on missing this. So I think, weird as it sounds, we're probably better off only leading shots in the horizontal axis and not in the vertical one. So we're just sort of hoping and praying that the ships don't change their vertical position too often, and that's a compromise solution. But again, I want to be realistic here. The AI, the gunners have no way of knowing what the orders are the enemy ship is executing. I mean, obviously I could just write some code that checks the target coordinate of the enemy ship, and hell, I could just simulate the ship's movement and find a perfect intercept, but that would be weird because it would involve some kind of telepathy on part of the gunners. So let's not do that. So instead, let's take out the lead value for vertical only. Let's see how that goes. So this magical button here, that's the apply code changes button, so that lets me just say, okay, this function is no different. Whoa! Yeah. You're getting to see some of the nice new explosion effects here as well. Sadly not in all that much high res, but you got to see a little bit of it. I am pretty pleased with them. Okay, so that one missed because it made an upwards movement right at the end. And that's exactly it. The gunner could have had no way of knowing that that final upwards movement was going to happen, and so it would have been supremely stupid if it had actually, applied that information. Looking at what we shot just now, I feel like it's leading at shots too much, right? Our poor target ship is slowly being tuned Tune is a great conjugation of to chew, chewed to pieces. And now it under-aimed. Interesting. Okay, one more time. That was perfect. No, that was 2, I think. So yeah, obviously, again, it can't deal with changes. It can't deal with acceleration, right? So what I'm tempted to do here, which is what I've done before code-wise, when I did leading shot code, is, and somehow that I think tends to feel better, is to just make the leading on the lead a little bit, because like it's basically making a gamble, assuming that your target might stop. So yeah, let's try that. So let's just lead by 85%. So one thing which, if you look on the to-do list, one thing that's in there is more clever and adjustable AI. So the idea with that is pretty much that instead of right now, all the tactical AI is just, has a certain amount of code and cleverness in there. But long term, it would be really nice to be able to choose difficulty level with the AI. And I have beliefs about difficulty level. And one of those beliefs is that as much as possible, difficulty level should be about the AI becoming smarter or less smart. And of course, that's the hardest way of doing it, right? And the second best option is to just explicitly advantage or disadvantage you right from the start. So let's just make the game harder by making you weaker or stronger, or making the whole world weaker or stronger. The thing which I like least is difficulty level that gets adjusted by, for example, just making the AI cheat. Both in the sense that it has access to information which you don't have, which it shouldn't have, or by giving the AI weird advantages, like you can just build things twice as fast. Because then you just end up with, say in Civ 5, if you play at high difficulty levels, the AI is still dumb as bricks, but it's just flooding you with lots of ineptly managed units, and eventually you lose just because you have so many ineptly managed units as your enemy that you lose. So yeah, that's the least fun way of doing difficulty. And so what I want to do is at least as much as possible to make difficulty adjustment based on actually making the AI smarter or dumber. The vague idea is that I'm probably going to have 5 difficulty levels at the end. There's like the normal one, then there's the high difficulty level. Basically the AI has a whole bunch of little extra tricks in there, a whole bunch of little extra heuristics to catch corner cases. It's more aggressive about very carefully calculating things out, using its advantage to be able to do lots of math. But it's not, but you're on an even footing with it. It's just trying to be clever. And then at the highest difficulty level, it's that plus you're at a disadvantage. So you start out weak. And going down, one difficulty level lower is basically the AI with a lot of the clever bits turned off. And so one of the clever bits to turn off here would be, for example, shot leading. So if you play against a easy AI, it doesn't lead its shots. So you can then do evasive maneuvers. If you play against an easy AI, for example, it might not do. So another one, for example, which I'd turn off there is suicide ramming. So at the moment, the tactical AI, when it notices that it has a ship that's no longer armed, it will take that ship and it will ram one of yours. And that's really great. It's really fun because I've seen some people play it, and they get wonderfully surprised, kind of horrified, and then happy when they realize that, like, okay, the AI is actually smart enough to do that sort of thing. But it's also a nasty surprise because, like, oh, your beautiful ship has just been blown to pieces by like some small burning thing that's rammed into it. So that's something to turn off. Just a whole lot of logic of like being more effective. Then finally, on the lowest difficulty level of them all, not only is the AI a little bit thick, you also have a massive advantage. So, I believe in having a big range of difficulties as well. The lowest difficulty level should really be pretty much a straight arrow towards winning, right? Like if you don't actively, like the idea is really lowest difficulty levels for learning, right? The assumption is you don't know how to play the game. You're just like building some stuff and sending it somewhere, and something happens maybe. And highest difficulty level is basically for complete masochists like me who want to feel like they really achieved something when they won. Okay, so let's go back into this combat and see what this new adjustment to shot leading now does. Oh, no. That actually wouldn't have mattered. Just realized that the sun was in the enemy's eyes, but of course I turned off jitter, so that actually doesn't matter. So in case you didn't know, weather conditions are relevant in this game. You can see here in the top right, you can hover over it to see a tooltip, and different weather conditions mean various things in terms of accuracy and so on. So like sunrise and sunset means that the sun is shining into your eyes if you're pointing in one direction, which makes you a lot less accurate. So the whole combat becomes kind of asymmetrical, and you always want to be to the left or to the right of your target. Right. Yeah, that hit. Move backwards again. Okay, shots moving, shots moving, shots moving. Bang. So it may probably didn't want to actually hit that door, but that's what the 85% leading means. And now this one actually overshot because the ship suddenly decelerated. This next one is a perfect hit, and oh, that was a lightning strike. Yeah. But I think this is no good. I think this is correct. Okay, so the random number generator really doesn't like that building very much, does it? Yeah, that's good. That feels right now to me. Okay, so we've got leading shots. Oh yeah, you can also note if it shoots again here, I've done some upgrades on how coats of arms are drawn, so they now actually get lit properly, and like the gold and silver bits in particular actually kind of light up a lot if they're hit by a light source, because yeah. So yeah, you could probably see that. Okay, while we're in here, let me just quickly show you what the overlays now look like in the editor. So I just finished that up from last time. I added the translation keys, which I didn't want to show because it was boring, and I did a little bit of adjustment of some other things. Okay, so the idea is now you can do this very nicely with shortcuts. You can just hit V for overlays, and then you can cycle through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that basically gives you a quick analysis of your ship, and it will tell you helpful things like the fact that this rear gun doesn't really have good access to ammunition, which you may or may not care about. But for example, The suspension chambers have very good access, well, except for that one, and the engines have okay access. So yeah, pretty pleased with that. Okay, so we've got the leading of the shots working. Now, of course, we need to actually put the jitter back in. Just make a note here, no TY lead. Okay, that has probably been like the least number of lines of code ever for a ticket that I thought might be a major piece of work, but it works. Okay, let's commit this and cross-reference it to the issue number. Okay, 1 down, 8 to go. Well, 36 down, 8 to go, really. Yeah, so having done this kind of thing, that took us, what, 37 minutes with talking. I think I'm now going to do the other bit where I'm going to talk a little bit about the feedback I got from IndieCade, which should bring us up to something like an hour. Can you tell? Subconscious Twitter checking, oh God, Donald Trump. Right. Let's just tweet again. Woohoo! Okay, IndieCade feedback. Okay, so yeah, IndieCade is a independent games festival in the US. It's one of the kind of really well-known ones. I guess it's the other well-known one apart from IGF. And you can submit your game for like a modest fee for like inclusion in the festival. And so I thought, hey, let's submit Airships. To be honest, I really didn't expect it to get in, and indeed it didn't get in, because it's not really the kind of game that IndieCade necessarily tends to go for, and it, was only half done, especially at the time. So really the main reason why I wanted to hand it in is they have this juror system where you have a bunch of people in the jury selecting games for inclusion in IndieCade, and these are like seasoned game development professionals, and they're anonymous. And so the nice thing about this combination is that these people know what they're talking about, and because you don't know who they are kind of at liberty to be honest with you. So yeah, I mean, for all I know, I follow some of the people who wrote this on Twitter, and if I was upset about what they wrote, I wouldn't know who to yell at. So that helps with honesty. So yeah, let's have a look at this feedback. Okay, I'm just going to read this out for like purposes of having a complete audio record. There's 3 feedbacks. Okay, feedback number 1. It feels good to experiment with different ship types and different approaches to combat. The campaign doesn't feel especially deep. It's unclear if this is supposed to be the meat of the game or if multiplayer is where you're supposed to focus your efforts. A more guided or gated introduction to the game would be good. The main menu contains a big mess of options, and without some guidance it's easy to go the wrong way, get lost wandering through shipbuilding or networking menus, and get confused about how to get into the basics of the game. So that was feedback number 1. Feedback number 2. I think the major issue is that there's really no indication of what you can do. I didn't realize buildings could be captured until I saw the AI do it. Otherwise, a fun little game that is deceptively tactical. And feedback number 3. The systems here are clearly complex, nuanced, and could be a lot of fun. However, I found it very difficult to get at that fun. I tried playing a new game, but found building a ship from scratch a bit too demanding and unclear, and using prefab ships unsatisfying. Then I went back to the main menu to start up a simple combat like you suggested in your instructions, but that also wasn't all that fun, even though I could see all the complex systems at play on both sides. I need to be invited into this complex world one step at a time. Show me why this game is a blast, but don't overwhelm me with all the options all at once. I'm impressed by the systems and simulation, but I feel like a bystander to the fun because I can't find a satisfying entry point. Okay, so basically these 3 feedbacks, certainly number 1 and number 3, kind of send a fairly clear message. It's basically, this looks cool, this looks deep, but I have no idea how to get started. I think that's absolutely fair. The game has no tutorial, right? If you go into the game and just start it up, right? Just imagine that you're playing this for the first time. You get all of these options here on the left, and then you go into like the airship editors and you get all of these options here on the left, and oh god, there's submenus and there's all of these numbers and what's even going on, you know. So I know, you know, this isn't exactly news to me. So far, okay, so the reason why there isn't currently a tutorial or any kind of intro or anything like that is really twofold. One is, from previous game projects, I found that if you make a tutorial too early, when you're still kind of figuring out what the game is actually going to be like, then you are cursed to rewrite that tutorial a dozen times. And I tell you, like, I mean, making tutorials is boring. Rewriting the tutorial n number of times because you've changed the mechanics is the worst. And you know, usually you don't see that if the game isn't early access. If you just see the finished product, then you know that's fine. You make the tutorial last, and I think that's, if you're going for a traditional tutorial, that's what you do. You make the entire game and then you make the tutorial last because then it's accurate. And so I didn't want to invite myself into this hell of rewriting tutorials and, like, you know, imagine like each development cycle, each new version, like certainly each major version, tack on another like week at the end of that of delay because I need to rewrite the tutorial. So I didn't want that. And the other reason is that I've been sort of able to afford not having a tutorial or any kind of introduction, because a lot of people get into airships because they see it on YouTube. Or I guess on Twitch. But like really the major driver for people buying the game has been this YouTuber Stuff Plus, who is great and you should watch. There. So if you don't know him, he's really great, he's really fun, and he has done a huge number of videos on airships. Here we go. Lots. His most recent series about airships, which was about the new landship stuff, just finished about 2 weeks ago, and like basically a large chunk of players know the game through that. And so of course you're watching the game, that's the first thing you do. You spend like a few hours maybe watching how the game's played, and then you go, oh, this looks fun, I want to do that as well, and you buy the game and you know where everything is, you know how it works because you've just been watching someone play it. So that's I'm just gonna, yeah, so you can see his oh wow, those are pretty neat giant landships. I actually don't know the rules about, like, I assume you don't mind Stuff Plus that I'm like literally just streaming your YouTube video here for a moment. Just want to show people that you do cool things. So yeah, check him out. Okay, yeah. So basically, people know how to play the game when they get to it, and that's lovely. But long term, that's not really a sustainable solution. You know, I can't just expect everyone to spend a few hours watching YouTube videos to know how to play the game. Funnily enough, actually, I'm really not a YouTube video watcher. Like I watch videos of my own game because it's interesting to know how people are playing it. I sometimes watch actual reviews and stuff, but I don't really watch Let's Play all that often, just because I don't know. It doesn't really work for me as a medium. I grew up without the television. I'm one of those weird kids, so maybe that's why. So yeah, you can see it's sort of a fish out of water thing. I'm doing a stream here. I'm doing video here, and I actually don't watch these things that often. So yeah. Anyway. Here's some feedback from Manesse. The game is very easy to learn and too easy versus AI. Okay, well, so evidently, at least to some people, the game seems easy, and I think that's definitely something I've seen as well when I've shown it at some festivals and stuff. Is that most people wander up to it and they click some buttons and they get really confused and they leave again, and some people, they get there and their eyes light up and they go like, oh, I know what this is so cool. And then they spend an hour playing it. They can barely be pried away from the game sometimes. Because for some people it's just, it goes click, oh, you build airships out of modules. Oh, there's all of these modules, this is cool. And that's cool, that's kind of the core audience. The question is how many other people are there who would really enjoy the game if they had a bit more of an on-ramp. Okay, so let's talk about on-ramps. Let's talk about tutorials. So in game development circles, tutorials, classic tutorials, have got a bit of a bad name because that is kind of weird artificial division of here's the tutorial, here's the actual game. So what people often say is really what you should do is you should have a game where you just introduce elements bit by bit throughout the gameplay, and so there's not really a direct tutorial. The game just is its own tutorial. But the thing is, this sort of assumes that the game is one of those linear games with a plot and stuff, and Airships really isn't that. It doesn't have a plot, it's a strategy game. You make your own plot. So what would that even do? You can't if you have a first-person shooter, you can be all oh yes, walk around. Oh yes, do this or that. At the start of Dishonored, for example, in a cute but transparent kind of, this is not a tutorial, honest. You can play hide and seek with a little girl right at the start. And of course the point is this is actually teaching you basic movement and stealth mechanics that you need for the game. But it's not a tutorial. It's built into, the game, it's plot relevant, it's emotionally relevant. So that's pretty neat. Can't really do that with Airships. So one option is to really just do a very classic tutorial where basically it just hears, this series of steps of how you do things. What I think is a bit hard there is that ultimately the game's about designing, it's about building. So, what exactly is it teaching you? So what I'm thinking, what could be cool, this is my current best guess at how to kind of on-ramp people, is to really have a series of challenges. So, you start out, and I have to label this properly. If I call it challenges, then people will not look at it. If you start out with the game, you're not going to click on challenges first. So I might have to label it tutorial or get started or something. Or Airfleet. I really want to call it Airfleet Academy. And so the idea is that tutorial number one is you're just given a single ship. You're dropped into combat mode with a single ship. And you have to just move closer to a target and shoot it, and then it gives you another target, and that target has particular fire arcs. So it kind of teaches you about movement and about fire arcs, which I guess are like the important primary concepts. Like the thing which worries me about tutorials is a bit how much stuff I have to put into the main game code to lock out and put on rails the experience of playing the game. Because if you have a very linear game anyway, like Dishonored, for example, is essentially linear, you know. I mean, yeah, you have levels, but like that, it's a linear game. You know, you can just, everything's made out of scripting anyway. So, here's some scripting for the tutorial, and here's some scripting for the plot. Airships doesn't have scripting, it doesn't need it, but now it only does, it needs it for the tutorial. So, the question is how much of that do I have to put in, you know, how many switches do I have to put in to like hide buttons, to make buttons unclickable, to like constrain where people can place modules, all of these sorts of things. And so my idea is to like not do too much of that and to give people, as I said, these challenges. Like you get dropped into combat mode, and the combat mode is pretty much as is, you know, with all the options available, but it just highlights like the buttons that you need right now and says like, okay, move to ship there, you know. And then following on from that, the idea would be that it gives you a series of challenges where it tells you like, okay, you have to defeat this enemy, and here's like the core of a ship already built, like with the engines and the crew and whatever. Here's an additional budget, and here's a small set of modules which you can choose from. You know, put something together that can defeat this. And so the idea is that is already sort of, you know, that's already kind of a game. You're not just being told stuff, you're actually problem solving. Like you're figuring out, okay, this particular target, you know, let's say you've got a ship that's equipped with lots of flak cannons and is like armored with let's say wooden armor. Then one good solution for that might be, for example, to equip your ship with rockets and then go down next to it, because then your rockets are, you know, they're inaccurate, but if you're close then you'll hit. The flak cannons can't shoot you because they're only upwards pointing, and the rockets are very effective at destroying wood. And so you can kind of find out these things by yourself. And from there you can then sort of segue, you know, somebody can say, okay, now you know enough about the game to play it. But here's some more challenges, and so eventually it can give you really tough challenges of like defeat this giant dragon using like this ragtag fleet or something like that. So I think that works reasonably well. Okay, so that's kind of an idea for doing an on-ramp type thing. As to when that goes in, I mean, obviously, like I'm reading this feedback right now and going, oh god, I should put this in immediately. In practice, I don't quite know. Basically, I could put it in after version 7.2. That's the earliest. Would make sense. I will push back version 8. I could put it in with or after version 8. I will have to think about that. But at least now, like the way the combat works is pretty much, you know, that's pretty much how it's gonna keep on being like. So if I make a tutorial now, I hope I won't have to rewrite it too many times. Okay, so that's one thing. That's the whole idea about having a guided or gated introduction. There's some secondary things which I could do as well. For example, I think it might be useful to have a system of unlocks for module types. So at the start, you only have the basic module types, and then when you do certain things, you unlock additional ones. So again, that's the kind of the idea of having these gates. Okay, so the other thing is like the main menu is a big mess, yeah, and I think that's true. And the easy way, well, the way I have to fix that is I simply have to reorganize it and use some more sub-menus, right? If we look at the menus, what? Oh, that's a debug option, standard combat. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we have like, this is like the campaign mode, the first two options. Then we have these next four options, ignoring that one, are really designing and fighting. Then these next four options are multiplayer. And then finally, these last three options are kind of miscellaneous settings and stuff like that. So that would be an obvious kind of grouping to do. Campaign, design and fight, multiplayer, settings and misc, and then quit. So that's good, because that's what, like 5, and you probably know, this is whole idea of rule of 7 plus minus 2, like the maximum number of UI elements you should have is 5 to 9, ideally 5, so that would be pretty nice. Yeah. So I think like a basic reorganization there might help already, and then like right at the top makes it 6 would be like Airship Academy. You can make them pulsate and glow and say like, okay, this is how you can figure out how to play the game. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else in the feedback. Yeah. So we've covered this. The campaign doesn't feel especially deep. Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. If you know the development plan, then version 9, so the version after next version, is going to be about making the campaign more interesting. Right now, it's still a bit of a placeholder. I have a whole bunch of ideas of what I want to do there to make that steeper and kind of give you more options. It's unclear if this is supposed to be the meat of the game or if multiplayer is where you're supposed to focus your effort. Well, there I have to say, it kind of depends on what you want to do. I would love to see more multiplayer games actually being played. They are played occasionally, but there isn't quite... there aren't so many players playing it simultaneously that you can just go online and find someone to fight against. That just doesn't work right now. And there's a calendar where you can schedule multiplayer, except for that no one ever does that. So this is going to need some revamping. My main idea there is to have a kind of a ladder type thing, probably using chess rankings. So the idea is people will then be incentivized to seek out each other and fight each other in these matches to, raise their relative position. An SSA is boarding AI is overpowered but very fun. So do you mean boarding AI ships is overpowered, like the strategy of boarding? Or do you mean AIs who board you? Oh, that's it, yeah. That's probably true. Boarding is one of those things that I think still needs some balancing to happen. By and large, the idea is that, if you don't want to be boarded, you should put some guards on your ship. Then you can still be boarded, but it gets a bit expensive in number of troops. So potentially guards need to be strengthened a bit. Okay. The major issue is that there's really no indication what you can do. I didn't realize buildings could be captured until I saw the AI do it. Well, this one, I don't want to get into an argument with this feedback, but I feel like, then you learn something, you could have just tried. But yeah, I think the point here again is that really there needs to be an on-ramp that shows you all of these options. Yeah, again, on-ramp, I think one potential way that can be sort of fixed is to give players situations where they are given the body of a ship, so everything except for, say, the weapons, and they can just decide what armaments to place on it. And then they can kind of move on from there to like fully constructing ships eventually. Yeah. Okay. I think those are the major things to take from this. The big thing is we need an on-ramp. The other things are the menus need to be reorganized. Yeah, maybe we need some kind of gating of kind of finding other ways of slowly introducing elements to the game. Okay. Well, I think that's about it. We've done exactly an hour, which I think is a good amount of time for streaming. As usual, I'd be very interested in your feedback in terms of, do you like the streams? Is there something you'd like me to start or stop doing? Is there something you'd like me to talk about? If you have any questions and so on. Here's some more feedback. Tank movements on the map relief is hard and we can't use RAM very much. Okay. What do you mean by the tank movements are hard? Like they're too limiting, or and ramming? Well, I don't know. I mean, I use ramming quite a lot. It's sort of a question of building ships that are optimized for that as well. But ramming is another thing, actually, a bit like boarding. If it was too easy, then it would be extremely overpowering. I nerfed ramming a bit, made it a bit less effective and a bit harder, exactly, because like at one point where it was freshly introduced, you should just ram everything to death and win. Yeah. So yeah, let's just see what Manasseh is saying about tank movements. And then we'll probably call this a day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're not playing the game yet, do check it out. It's called Airships Conquer the Skies. You can find it on Steam and on itch.io. And I will be back on Monday to do a kind of session where I play a game or prototype and kind of talk about game design in general. Okay, the tanks are stuck. Oh, you don't mean in the main map, you mean in the actual combat. Yeah, I mean that's a thing. That's a thing that will happen. They do get stuck reasonably often. I think the tanks with small treads are kind of doomed to get stuck. Legged ones are a bit better. I'll make a note to see if I can make them a bit better yet at climbing, not getting stuck. But to some degree, that's the trade-off you're doing here. Tanks aren't as necessarily as maneuverable as airships. Okay, that's all. And I will see you in the future. Bye now.